When I was having my friends watch Murder Drones, there's one question that kept coming up. What is going on? I explained to the best of my ability because of my vast knowledge on the series, but that doesn't stop it from being confusing. So for you, yes, you, the average viewer of Murder Drones that doesn't scorch every second for lore pieces, I decided to put together a timeline of the entire show and all the lore behind it. My boy Tyro's only covered up to episode 7, so if you're confused about episode 8, this will cover that as well. Of course, I recommend you watch the actual show for yourself, so there will be a link in the description for you to follow along. With that being said, let's hop right into it. Now, the timeline I've decided to put together actually has 2 main sections, but for the sake of making it more clear, I'm going to split it up into 4. There's the Earth and Copper 9 eras, however these can be further split into 2 sections. For Earth, there's Earth era before the Gala Massacre, and after/during the Gala Massacre. For Copper 9, there's Copper 9 before the pilot, and Copper 9 during/after the pilot, or the actual events of the show. Of course, that means the first thing we need to cover is... There's this silly company called JCJenson, and they make robots called worker drones, basically made for whatever manual labor you could possibly want them to do. I assume they're pretty expensive because the only families we see own them is the Elliot family, a rich Australian family consisting of James, the father, Louisa, the mother, and Tessa, the daughter. There's a small problem though. You see, the parents, James and Louisa, were not the best people. They constantly abused their daughter and locked her in the basement, but more importantly for the sake of this video, they just dumped whatever drones they didn't want in the landfill. Ignoring the ethics behind dumping completely sentient robots away like they're a toaster, this means they did not follow JCJenson's procedures for properly disposing of worker drones. Why is this important, you may ask? Well, if a drone is improperly disposed of, there's a small chance they may come back as zombie drones when they come back from the dead. This is present here in Sin, this drone right here. You see, that small chance happened with Sin, and she's now back, being possessed by the Absolute Solver. This would be a good time to explain the difference between Sin and the Solver, huh? Alright, Sin is the robot that used to be a normal worker drone, and when she came back, the Absolute Solver, a program that slowly corrupts its host until it's completely under its control, and also gives them cool powers that let them control matter, make voids, and other stuff we'll get to down the road. Sin, when reawoken, was completely possessed by the personality of this virus. Yes, it has a personality. The Absolute Solver. So you can think of them as the same thing, for the sake of this video. Sin is just the original host of it, the real Sin's long gone. Got that? Great. Back to the timeline, remember that girl named Tessa? Well, she likes to take in some of these improperly disposed of drones and make them her friends. There are 3 she had successfully reawakened before, being N, V, and J, and she gave them hair by grave digging and stealing corpses' hair. Yes, that's canon, that's confirmed, don't ask. Anyways, Sin here comes in, and for a while everything's going well. However, she eventually hatches her plan of assimilation and corrupts every other single drone in the manor, including N, J, and V. See, Tessa and Jay would lock Sin in the basement, where she would use as a place to experiment on making the perfect killing machine. In other words, the early prototypes of what we will begin to know as disassembly drones. Anyways, Sin wanted to kill a bunch of humans, and it just so happened she got a perfect chance when the Elliot family as well as the Frontal Bucket family held a gala event, where a massive number of humans would come out to dance and be rich together, I guess. Sin saw this as their perfect time to launch the plan. Moving us into the next part of the timeline, which is... As I mentioned before, the Elliots and Frontal Buckets were having a gala, and all the humans were in one place. How convenient. Sin decided to show mercy to Tessa, the one human who had treated her well, by warning her what she would do and telling her to stay away. Tessa, of course, didn't listen and ran in trying to stop it, leading to her and the rest of the humans at the event being murdered by the corrupted drones and Sin. She then decided to destroy the manor with a null explosion, the most powerful attack in the Absolute Solver's arsenal, also creating a flesh void underneath it which leads straight to the planet's core. This will be useful later. After this easy beatdown at the manor, Sin decided she wanted to take it a step further and wipe humanity from Earth. This is when those prototypes she made came in handy. She used many of the corrupted drones from the manor and transformed them into the perfect killing machine. Sleek, fast, agile, and with any weapon of choice at their disposal, the disassembly drones were born. Under Sin's complete control, the disassembly drones fought vigorously against the humans, slaughtering whoever came across their path. Humanity tried to resist, but these things were so durable, so powerful, and so indestructible that they honestly stood no chance, with it not being long before humanity on Earth was wiped, and Sin threw another null void into the planet, exploding it from the inside out. Small problem though, humanity wasn't completely gone, and there were still some remaining on other planets, namely Copper-9. Humanity saw what was happening on Earth, and honestly, they weren't big fans of it as you'd imagine, and it just so happened on Copper-9 they had this really secure underground facility called the Cabin Fever Labs. Basically a series of underground chambers meant to protect the humans there, while they found a way to exterminate the Solver. To assist with this protection, they created the Anti-Drone Sentinels, these dinosaur-looking robots that were programmed to attack and kill anything robotic, installed with a flash ability called boot looping that could put drones in a paralyzed state. The humans at the Cabin Fever Labs infected a variety of drones with the Absolute Solver programming to try and create a way of destroying it. Among these drones, many of them had no effect with the Solver, as seen with Alice and presumably Doll's father. However, 2 subjects would be a success in replicating the powers of the Solver, also bringing with them the threat of Sin taking them over. These 2 drones were 048, Yeva, and 002, Nori. Humans would study these 2 drones intently, eventually coming up with something that could remove the Solver from the drones, while still letting them keep the powers. It was a patch, shaped like a cross with a USB attached to the end of it. Once this USB was inserted into the drone, the Solver would be gone. Yeva was the first successful patch of the Absolute Solver. She still had her powers, but the threat of Sin taking her over and corrupting her was completely gone. Nori, on the other hand, would be a bit more of an issue. On top of the fact she was just uncooperative, when the humans set up a ritual to remove it from Nori, Sin took over, and this was more than the humans could handle. She wiped out all of the humans in the room, except for one, Mitchell, because Yeva stepped in and forced the patch into Nori, finally freeing her from the Solver/Sin. Sin wasn't done though, she had one last trick up her sleeve. Right before Sin was fully gone, she created a null void in Nori's hand, and when Yeva cut off Nori's hand to stop it from exploding in their faces, it fell down the flesh pit towards the planet's core. Whoops. With that explosion, all biological life was wiped from the planet, including the rest of humanity, though I still hold out hope that Mitchell is alive to this day. Anyways, with the planet becoming a frozen wasteland covered in silicate, the drones could create a society of their own, now that there weren't any humans left. Nori and Yeva escaped the labs to a place called Camp 98.7, where they and the others like Khan were able to meet up and move out to start anew. Sin, however, really didn't like the idea of the other hosts possibly becoming strong enough to beat her, so she sent the murder drones to the planet to exterminate the worker drones, in hopes that the Solver host would be eliminated as well. Now, almost all of these murder drones from the manor were unfeeling. No idea who they were before, no emotions. The 3 exceptions to this were N, J, and V. Since Sid would hang around them the most at the manor, she let those 3 keep their personalities. V and J were threatened to keep silent and do their job of murdering the worker drones, and in return, Sin wouldn't kill them, or maybe even worse. N, on the other hand, had his memories erased. He was Sin's favorite. It's unclear why N's memories were wiped by Sin, but it's possibly because Sin didn't want to damage his morally perfect personality by threatening him, or maybe because he would be hard to control. Anyways, Khan had heard from Nori about the impending doom of the murder drones before they arrived, so luckily he was able to build 3 massive doors to keep them out and any drone behind them would be safe. Unfortunately, his wife, Nori, got snagged with nanite acid from one of them, leading to Khan having to put her out of her misery. A real shame considering she and Khan had just had a daughter named Uzi. An unspecified amount of time afterwards, they got to Yeva and her husband as well. The disassembly drones were tough, but there were some drones who managed to survive outside the bunker, namely in the Cabin Fever Labs. These disassembly drones couldn't reach them because of the Sentinels, and all that tried were promptly dealt with. Well, that's it, right? Sin won? Well, that's the thing. Remember that daughter Nori and Khan had? Well, she was about to be a real pain in Sin's eldritch ass. Still following? Good. because we've gotten to the point where things will have to be explained a little bit less. The rest of this will mostly be covering the events of the show itself. So, from the top, Uzi is Nori's daughter, and she had a real problem with what her mom told Khan to do because she felt that they were being cowards hiding. So she went out and tried to kill the disassembly drones, which failed, and instead ended up teaming up with one of the disassembly drones and to fight back. They were successful, taking V as a prisoner and temporarily killing J. The reason I say temporarily is because the disassembly drones have a core, or this little heart thing inside of them that's basically their real essence. If a disassembly drone dies, this core will activate on its own and find stuff around it to rebuild the body of the host, while the consciousness of the original drone is held inside of it, dormant, making sure that there's no escape for them, even in death. Since Jay was in the colony, that meant killing whatever was around. Unfortunately for Jay, Ed and Uzi kinda destroyed the core. Fortunately for Jay, this little black orb inside of it, the actual consciousness of the drone that was dormant before, floated away safely, meaning she was technically still alive. Seeing this eldritch beast, Ed and Uzi realized they had to do a little more digging on the solver itself. To make things a little bit more complicated, Doll, the kid of Yeva, inherited her mother's abilities, as well as Uzi, meaning now Uzi was in danger of being corrupted even if she didn't know it at that point. That meant they both had to figure out a way to get this thing out of them fast. Perfect time to team up, right? Wrong. V was actually the one who ended up getting to Doll's parents, and with Uzi working alongside V, that's kind of a big deal for Doll, so instead they became enemies somewhat. Oh right, also, remember how Jay's consciousness survived? Well, they transferred her to a clone body, so she's alive and kicking, hooray. She and a grown-up Tessa had just landed on Copper 9. Wait, Tessa? Didn't she die? We'll get into that later. Anyways, N, Uzi, and V went to a little location known as Camp 98.7, which we talked about before, to find out more info about Doll and the solver itself, where they ended up finding this little green bug, the key bug, which just so happened to be a ticket to getting under the cabin fever labs. During this, Uzi started seeing the first signs of being possessed by Sin. Uzi grew wings and a tail made of flesh, and became consumed by a need for oil to stop herself from overheating. While in this state, she was basically bloodlusted, meaning she was kind of out of it and wasn't really in control when she killed a bunch of worker drones. While she wasn't in control, she wasn't actually possessed, more like a feral animal, so N was able to snap her out of it. Sick. N and V, back at Uzi's house, collapsed when Sin started trying to delete the memories of N. So Uzi hacked into the minds of N and V to restore the memories, stopping Sin from erasing them again. Of course, we know V's memory didn't get wiped, only N's, but Uzi didn't know that, so she's along for the ride too. After stopping Sin from erasing N's memories, she was able to replace Sin as the administrator for N and V, making them free from Sin's control. Uzi, N, and V started making their way to the cabin fever labs, only to run into Tessa, Jay, and Doll. Doll had made a deal with those two to get the key bug from Uzi, so the three of them could venture underneath the labs and get the patch, the thing that cured Yeva and Nori before. Doll wanted it to cure herself, obviously, and Tessa wanted it to help humanity. For sure, totally. No ulterior motive there. When the other three showed up, Doll decided it wasn't really worth it and ran off with the key bugs, jumping into the labs. Jay went off to get the ship they used, while Tessa joined our main trio in venturing into the labs. After narrowly making it through the Sentinels, it became more and more clear that Sin's control over Uzi was starting to increase. Tessa wanted N to kill Uzi because she was basically a threat to the universe if Sin got her grubby little hands on her. Doll got to the elevator that traveled underneath the labs first, unfortunately, while Tessa, N, and Uzi just narrowly made it out. V, on the other hand, stayed back to fight the Sentinels, but she'll be fine, I'm sure. When the three landed underneath the labs, it became pretty obvious to Uzi that Tessa wanted to kill her, so she skedaddled on out of there, where N got separated from Tessa in the cave as well. Uzi found her way to the place her mom had been experimented on, seeing what her mother did to all the humans and what would soon happen to her if Sin managed to win. At the same time, Tessa started blowing up the old files of the labs. Weird, but okay. N almost got killed by Sin, who somehow found her way there too, before being saved by Nori, who survived. See, her body was killed, but the person who killed her, who of course was Khan, didn't know about the cores, so her core just happened to stay alive. So she lived as a core underneath the labs trying to find the patch to fight Sin. Nori told N about this patch, meaning Tessa wasn't being truthful about Uzi needing to die. and of course was not very happy about this, so when he found Tessa again, about to deal the finishing blow to Uzi, he ended up killing Tessa. Uzi, however, had already been taken control of by Sin, meaning Nori and En had to fight a possessed Uzi. It seemed like Sin was wiping the floor with them until En confessed his love for Uzi, putting Sin off guard, and Nori smacked her into the ground so hard that Uzi snapped out of the possession. One small problem though. Sin had taken the first second she possessed Uzi to destroy the patch, basically their only weapon against her. After Uzi snapped out of it, however, Tessa decided it was time to lock in and come back to life. Remember how I said we'd get to this later? Well, turns out the reason Tessa was acting so weird and wanted to kill Uzi so bad is because it actually wasn't Tessa, and she had died at the massacre. It was Sin who had so nicely taken the skin of Tessa to wear on herself under the spacesuit. Uzi realized they were done for, so when Sin was dragging Uzi down into the flesh pit that led to the core, she sacrificed herself to let En get away. How nice. I wonder what will happen. Oh. Yeah, Uzi's floating outside of Copper 9 right now. And now we're on to episode 8. The last episode. Let's get right into it. So, Sin, after deciding it's time to destroy the planet, as we saw in episode 7, starts ripping apart parts of it. Uzi, floating in space, meets Nori, finally realizing it's her mom, who tells her that she has to kill Sin's core to win, and then steals Jay's spaceship and takes Uzi away. Sin didn't really like this though, so she blew up the spaceship too. While En and Uzi were falling from space to the planet's surface, Jay noticed Thad, Lizzie, and Khan were still there, but before she could kill them, V came back riding a Sentinel and starts absolutely bodying Jay. Told you she'd be back. By this point, En and Uzi have gotten down to the surface, and Uzi attempts to initiate a battle with Sin by throwing a knoll down to the core where she's hiding. But she soon realizes she's not built for that when Sin grabs the knoll, destroys it, and proceeds to basically incapacitate the two of them with one attack. And gets his core ripped out while trying to save V from Sin. Before she can deal the finishing blow though, Khan saves En, and Sin and Jay have an epic battle versus En, V, and Uzi, where they blow 2 holes in the planet. Whoops. It's not going great, but Sin gets overconfident, leading to Uzi reading one of her moves and ripping Sin's core out, destroying it. Her black orb of consciousness is still around though, and to get rid of that too, Uzi eats it. And just like that, Sin's gone. And since Sin was the one who was ripping the planet apart, after she's gone, it's mostly able to restore itself. Oh yeah, and also Sin's living inside of Uzi somehow. I don't know, man. I guess it's because she ate the consciousness of her. Well, that's the story. At least the best interpretation of it I had. This script, even with other timelines out there that I could use to help fact check my own, took a long time to make. I really hope you enjoyed this and the video does well, because if it doesn't, well, that's a lot of time down the drain, and this Murder Drones content isn't really doing great for me as well as it used to. So I might do FNAF and Gaslight District stuff instead. With that all being said, make sure to like the video if you enjoyed, as well as dropping a subscribe and a comment to let me know what you thought of the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one, whether it's Murder Drones or not. Bye.